Coming up on Valley View News, Kaiser Permanente employees who don't get vaccinated face termination. Plus, CSUN's Performing Arts Department takes a unique approach to in-person classes. And the U.S. is finally lifting the travel ban that was started because of the pandemic.
Hello and welcome to Valley View News. I'm Elizabeth Medina.
And I'm Malik Patterson in the Digital Media Center.
The first Jamaican-American U.S. Secretary of State, Colin Powell, has died. Powell died from complications of COVID-19 on Monday morning. He was known as a trailblazer. Powell helped shape American foreign policy for more than 20 years. Students and professors remembered Powell, including CSUN English professor Amy Reynolds and CSUN student Kayla Leigh Sparks.
Well, it's really sad. I'm really sorry to see him go. He was a great American, a great patriot.
Today, a very important person passed away today, and it's very saddening, but at the same time, he left behind a great legacy.
President Biden ordered flags to be flown at half-staff in honor of the man who he called a friend. Powell was fully vaccinated but suffered from pre-existing medical conditions. He had Parkinson's and multiple myeloma, a type of cancer that affects plasma cells and suppresses the body's immune system. Powell is survived by his wife Alma and 3 children.
This week in Georgia, the trial started for the 3 Caucasian men accused of killing a 25-year-old African-American man. Ahmaud Arbery was out for a jog when he was fatally shot in February 2020. Gregory McMichael, his son Travis, and their neighbor William Roddy Bryant Jr. was charged with malice and felony murder. Even though the shooting happened last year, some people in Glenn County, Georgia, are outraged.
Going to be feelings of sadness, but at the end we're hoping for a spirit of happiness when we get the guilty verdict that we're looking for.
The 3 defendants pled not guilty. However, a video taken by Bryant showed Travis McMichael shooting Arbery with 3 shotgun blasts. Defense attorney says the men pursued Arbery because they thought he was a burglar.
The United States will lift its travel ban for fully vaccinated international travelers next month. The White House also said restrictions will be lifted at ferry crossings and land borders with Mexico and Canada. Many non-U.S. citizens who travel to places like Brazil, China, and parts of Europe still won't be allowed into the U.S. The ban started at the beginning of the pandemic. It was then extended last winter to slow the spread of the Delta COVID-19 variant. Several airlines expressed relief that the ban is being lifted. Airlines have struggled during the past 18 months with sharp decreases in international travel.
Some LA business owners are enforcing a new vaccination mandate this week. Valley View's Jonathan Giovinazzi explains.
It's game day in LA, and the atmosphere at Common Space Brewery in Hawthorne is exhilarating. But manager Gabe Callahan and his team are enforcing a new rule this week.
Just to let you know, we need vaccination requirements for inside.
Sure. If you want to sit inside at LA breweries, bars, or large events, you'll need to show proof that you're vaccinated for COVID-19.
For me, I think for the employees as well, it's about the idea that we're doing something better for the greater good.
Fresh with my booster.
Today. Not much has changed for Common Space. Beer is still made in-house, and customers are still flocking in like they always do. Callahan says he's not scared of losing business because his staff is polite when enforcing the mandate.
We have wonderful employees that are very good and nice about it, and we're as accommodating as can be about everything.
And if people aren't vaccinated, many breweries can still serve them. Those guests are welcome to have a seat outside.
Don't worry about coming in here to Common Space, whether you're vaccinated or not. We'll have a spot for you.
While bartenders check for cards and pour handcrafted beer, some customers, even vaccinated ones, are unsure if they agree with the mandate.
I think it should still be up to the people to have their own choice on what they do to their bodies.
The CDC says that fully vaccinated people can still spread COVID-19. So the next time you're at a brewery, like Common Space, you'll need a mask when you're indoors, unless you're eating or drinking. Reporting from the city of Hawthorne, I'm Jonathan Giovinazzi.
In a tribute to America's fallen police officers, President Biden spoke with their families about the losses. 491 officers were killed in the line of duty in 2019 and 2020. The ceremony took place just hours after 3 Texas deputy constables were shot in an apparent ambush early Saturday morning.
So under the mournful sound of the bagpipes, we must also hear something else. Call to do better, to do more, to keep you safe, to keep our communities safer, for us to step up, build trust and respect, and heal the breach we now see in so many communities.
Biden said that 2020 was the deadliest year on record for law enforcement. He addressed demands by some activists who support defunding the police by promising more funding for community policing and mental health assistance.
The FDA voted unanimously last weekend to recommend boosters for people who received the Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 shots. The committee advised people should get the booster at least 2 months after their first dose. They voted 19-0, authorizing the booster for people above the age 18. Johnson & Johnson says the boosting at 2 or 6 months can bring effectiveness up to 94%. J&J also says that the effectiveness doesn't diminish at the same rate as the Pfizer vaccine. However, the J&J vaccine has been proven not as effective as the other 2 vaccines.
Last Friday was the deadline for LAUSD employees to have taken at least 1 dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. Officials say 97% of administrators and teachers met the deadline. Employees must get a second dose by November 15th. People who don't comply could be terminated. LAUSD requires weekly testing regardless of vaccination status. The district also requires that all eligible students to be fully vaccinated by December 19th.
An apparent ambush shooting outside of a sports bar in Houston last weekend killed 1 officer and wounded 2 others. The suspect is said to be a man in his early 20s. Houston authorities confirmed that 3 of their deputies had been involved in the shooting.
Our deputies went out to confront a suspect. While they were trying to make an arrest of that suspect, they had him on the ground, and a second suspect came out of nowhere with a rifle and began to basically shoot our deputies.
However, authorities later confirmed the person isn't believed to be the shooter. 2 of the 3 deputies shot were working an extra shift at the bar. They went outside to investigate a disturbance. Police think they interrupted a robbery. The suspect remains at large.
The Justice Department wants the Supreme Court to step in and block the Texas law that bans most abortions after 6 weeks. The DOJ hasn't said when it'll petition the court. In early September, a divided court chose not to review the Texas law, effectively making it legal. The Justice Department said that Roe v. Wade was meaningless in Texas. So far, there have been many cases challenging the law. The justice will consider the abortion issue again in December over a Mississippi law that bans abortion after 15 weeks. Texas and Mississippi law currently have no exceptions for rape or incest.
The UN Climate Summit takes place next month in Glasgow, Scotland. Former President Barack Obama will attend and speak to young activists. Obama's office said he'll speak about the progress that's been made in the last 5 years. He'll talk about the leadership role young people around the globe have played in urging more action on climate change. President Biden will also be there. He'll discuss his plan to cut carbon emissions 50 to 52% by 2030. The Glasgow summit takes place 5 years to the day after the Paris agreements on climate change.
President Biden said those ignoring subpoenas from the committee investigating the January 6 riots should be prosecuted. Press Secretary Jen Psaki said that Biden supports the committee's work and any decisions about prosecutions. Biden was asked what message he had for people being prosecuted by the Department of Justice.
What's your message to people who defy congressional subpoenas on the January 6 committee?
I hope that the committee goes after them and holds them accountable.
Should they be prosecuted by the Justice
I do,
Department?
yes.
The committee said it'll hold Steve Bannon in criminal contempt for refusal to comply with a subpoena. Bannon said he refuses to attend a deposition until the committee reaches an agreement with former President Trump over executive privilege.
Thousands of people working at Kaiser will be suspended from work if they don't get fully vaccinated by December 1st. Mary Perionian has the story.
Employees at Kaiser Permanente who don't get the COVID vaccine are facing suspension from work. James Mack is a property manager for Kaiser. He thinks being required to get vaccinated is best for everyone.
Hospitals, all businesses are doing what they think is best for their employees and for visitors or anything like that.
President Biden mandated that companies with more than 100 employees must have them all vaccinated.
I think it's a little unfair because if people don't want to take the vaccine, they shouldn't have to. But of course, the vaccine could be safe, but then people are a little suspicious of it.
Workers at Kaiser and people at many other companies like Shane Marshall will get terminated if they don't get vaccinated.
Right. Yeah, it's wrong. I'm not down with it. I'm looking at the same thing at my job. Shot or fired. We don't have a date yet.
Juanita Lujan believes that getting the vaccine will help decrease cases worldwide.
This disease is not going to go away if these people do not take their shots.
Kaiser employs 216,000 people nationwide. In California, Governor Gavin Newsom said that 2.2 million healthcare workers had until September 30 to get fully vaccinated or be suspended. In addition to the new COVID rules, Kaiser hospitals are also experiencing staffing shortages, and their healthcare workers have voted to strike. They want a 4% raise. Reporting for Valley View News, I'm Mary Pronian.
More to come on Valley View News. Female engineers still face sexism within their field, and 5 people are dead after a bow and arrow attack in Norway. We'll be right back.
Coming up on Valley View News, the U.S. prepares for a new COVID-19 variant. Plus, Native Americans march from Los Angeles to San Diego protesting indigenous child detentions. And Sugar Taco partners with the Martha Project to give vegan meals to the homeless.
Hello and welcome to Valley View News. I'm Mary Pronian.
And I'm Elizabeth Medina in the Digital Media Center.
New York will declare a state of emergency to prepare for a possible rise in COVID-19 cases. The precautionary measure will take effect December 3rd. Governor Kathy Hochul said Delta spikes and the Omicron variant prompted the move. Hochul says she's concerned COVID-19 cases could flood New York's health facilities. The proclamation will permit the state to increase hospital capacity, combat staffing shortages, and secure supplies. It would also limit non-essential surgical procedures. CSUN students weighed in on the declaration and considered if California should enforce a similar measure.
So I think it would be better if to take extreme precaution, just call it now so that way we don't have another 2 years on our hands, and we can actually, now that we know more about COVID-19 anyways, we can try and either stop it or create another shot or booster, whatever needs to be done. But I think taking precautions now would be best for everybody.
So I'm not entirely sure how far up the spike has gotten since then. I haven't been paying attention to it. I've just been hanging out.
New York is currently registering more than 300 COVID-19 cases a day. The state of emergency is scheduled through January 15th, 2022.
The new Omicron coronavirus variant is likely already in the U.S., according to Dr. Anthony Fauci. Omicron, also known as B11529, was first detected in Botswana and reported in South Africa last month. As scientists race to uncover more about the new strain, some preliminary findings are raising concerns.
What's interesting about this variant is that it has mutations that are common to all 4 of the other variants of concern. So it has features in terms of diagnostic tests together with the alpha variant. It has mutations in common with the beta and gamma variants. And importantly, it has a mutation in the area of the virus near what we call the furin cleavage site that enables it to transmit faster, which is the same kind of mutation in the Delta variant.
Although cases of Omicron have not been reported in the U.S., Fauci says he wouldn't be surprised if the variant is present in the country because of its high level of contagion. While experts also warn the strain may evade vaccine protection, further investigations will be required to determine how Omicron affects the body's immune response. Until then, Fauci says it's essential for people to get boosters and continue wearing masks.
The 3 defendants in the Ahmaud Arbery murder case were found guilty of murder. The men all faced the same 9 counts. Travis McMichael, who fatally shot Arbery, is guilty on all charges, including malice murder and felony murder. His father, Gregory McMichael, and neighbor William Bryan were acquitted of the top charge. All 3 men now face life in prison. The nearly all-white jury deliberated for about 11 hours before reaching a decision. Arbery's mother shared that although it's the second Thanksgiving her family has shared without her son, she's happy that they're finally receiving justice.
But this is the first Thanksgiving that we can look at that empty chair and say we finally got justice for you, Ahmaud.
Arbery was jogging in a Georgia neighborhood when the men chased him down and fatally shot him last year. The men claimed they acted in self-defense.
The U.S. is banning entry to foreigners from 8 southern African countries to halt the spread of the Omicron variant. Travelers from countries such as Botswana, Eswatini, South Africa, and Zimbabwe are restricted from admission, among a few others.
We don't know a lot about the variant except that it is a great concern. It seems to spread rapidly, and I've spent about a half hour this morning with my COVID team led by Dr. Fauci, and so that was the decision we made.
The World Health Organization designated Omicron as a variant of concern last week. Unlike other nations who implemented immediate travel restrictions, the U.S. mandate went into effect on Monday. According to officials, several steps were required before the ban was executed. This included a formal proclamation, guidelines for TSA, and coordination with airlines. As more countries adopt restrictions worldwide, WHO's Africa director cautions against them. She says closing off borders can threaten global solidarity and burden vulnerable nations.
On Thanksgiving, a group of indigenous women organized a 4-day march for freedom to protest children in detention centers. Our reporter Celine Stevens was there.
For Indigenous communities, Thanksgiving was a national day of mourning. This past Thanksgiving, Yvette Sochia and a few Indigenous women organized what they called the first annual March for Freedom for Indigenous children in detention.
We will be making stops throughout the night to rest. We have elders and we have children. That's why we have a caravan. But the intention is to occupy the spaces marching. This is a prayer walk.
President Biden stated he would end the use of private prisons for all forms of detention. However, the executive order he signed excluded immigrant detention centers. Sochia says they must fight for those who've been separated from their families and detained.
While we honor the dead, we must fight for the living. So it starts with the youth, and today the most oppressed are inside cages.
The 4-day-long march began at the Pueblo Historical Monument and concluded at San Diego's Otay Mesa Detention Center. Co-organizer Selena Ramirez said it's vital to demand the release of the children immediately.
We're not going to wait around 10 years, 20 years, 50 years from now to find our children being dug up near these encampments.
Co-founder of the Indigenous Alliance movement, Clear Bear, said that for many Indigenous peoples, Thanksgiving is a grim reminder of America's past.
Arguably the greatest genocide in human history happened in the Americas, and it is at least talked about. And that every time we celebrate this holiday, it's disrespecting our people.
Yvette says that the march will become an annual event. She wants to remind people that while many are enjoying Thanksgiving dinner with their loved ones, they should also remember the Indigenous children that will not be able to go home to their families. Reporting from Los Angeles, I'm Celine Stevens.
President Joe Biden had potentially precancerous lesion removed. The extraction happened during a routine colonoscopy at the Walter Reed Medical Center last week. The lesion was discovered to be a tubular adenoma, which is benign but can become cancerous. During the surgery, Vice President Kamala Harris assumed his position for 85 minutes. She became the first woman to hold presidential power in U.S. history. Biden underwent a similar procedure in 2008 when surgeons removed a polyp during a colonoscopy.
Trump's former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, may be charged with criminal contempt. The 62-year-old defied a subpoena when he skipped a deposition with the House committee investigating the January 6th U.S. Capitol insurrection. California Representative Adam Schiff is a member of the 8th member group. He says the committee will convene soon to determine if they should recommend criminal charges for Meadows.
We will probably make a decision this week on our course of conduct with that particular witness and maybe others. I can't go into what communications that we're having or haven't had with particular witnesses, but we are moving with alacrity with anyone who obstructs the committee.
In a statement, Meadows' attorney said he is following the advice of former President Trump by not testifying. Trump argues that Meadows and other aides can call on the executive privilege for protection. Last month, Steve Bannon surrendered to the FBI after being indicted for failing to comply with Capitol attack investigations. Like Meadows, Bannon excused himself from subpoenas by citing executive privilege.
The Waukesha parade suspect that killed 6 people and injured more than 60 made his first court appearance. Police say Darrell Brooks was fleeing a domestic disturbance when he knowingly drove into a parade. He is facing 5 counts of first-degree intentional homicide and a possible 6th charge after an 8-year-old succumbed to his injuries. Since his arrest, Brooks' expansive criminal history has surfaced. According to court documents, Brooks has been charged 10 times since 1999. The 39-year-old is a registered sex offender in Nevada. A warrant issued by the state in 2016 is still active. Brooks was also arrested last month after allegedly running over the mother of his child. He was released on a $1,000 bond following the incident. Critics argue that Brooks shouldn't have been freed because of his active warrant. They also question the low $1,000 bond he was issued. Brooks is scheduled back in court on January 14th, 2022.
Calculated smash and grab robberies are surging across California and beyond. Groups of thieves are specifically targeting high-end retail stores. Last month, more than 80 people looted a Nordstrom in the city of Walnut Creek in Contra Costa County. They stole about $100,000 of merchandise before fleeing in at least 10 vehicles. Last week, a crowd of robbers raided the Westfield Topanga Mall in Canoga Park. They ran off about $25,000 worth of luxury goods. California's Attorney General Rob Bonta said the cases are being monitored closely.
This is organized retail crime. This is not petty theft. This is not shoplifting. This is not a teenager stealing candy from the store. This is organized. This is planned. This is premeditated. There is intent. There is use of weapons like crowbars, hammers, guns, including ghost guns, pepper spray, flash mobs, up to 80, 90 people stealing up to $1 million. So we're going to continue to do what we do.
Experts say the increase of organized crime during the holiday isn't new. However, incidents have grown to be a more forceful in recent years. Critics allege laws like Proposition 47 reduced penalties for some offenses. The 2014 statute also raised the threshold for a misdemeanor to $950. But Bonta disagrees that the laws have motivated the recent crime wave. He says organized mob circles are collecting thousands of dollars from each operation. According to Bonta, law enforcement must work together to curb cases and hold criminals accountable.
The Santa Clarita Valley Food Pantry aims to spread holiday cheer this season despite food shortages. Valley View's Alexia Mersola has more on the story.
The Santa Clarita Food Pantry held the first of its annual holiday season turkey drives to help families. It operated leading into Thanksgiving. Later around Christmas, they'll do the same to help those in need. Many turned out to get food from the drive, but many also made donations. One donor, Mindy Cabral, a music teacher from the Little School of Music, donated on behalf of her school.
The students and families at the school raised money to donate for the food pantry to help feed some of the hungry tummies here in our community.
Due to the pandemic, turkeys are in short supply. James Espinoza is the executive director of the pantry.
This year, it's been really tough because we didn't get the 300 turkeys we did last year. We hit about 200 turkeys this year, so we're hoping to serve 200 families this year with turkeys.
Despite the shortage of turkeys, the pantry still had a lot of holiday fixings to go around, such as stuffing, gravy, and mashed potatoes.
The food pantry will hold drives such as this one to keep the holiday spirit alive and well this season for hundreds of families in need. Reporting for Valley View News, I'm Alexia Mersola.
Kevin Strickland, a man wrongfully convicted of murder, was set free last week. He was incarcerated at age 18 for a triple homicide in Kansas City, Missouri in 1979.
It's just more so, frustration that it took them this long to finally get a judge that would hear all the evidence after I repeatedly filed petition after petition on my own, trying to have somebody hear my situation.
After 42 years, no physical evidence has linked him to the crime. Strickland alleges he was at home when 4 others shot and killed 3 people. This will become the 7th longest wrongful sentence documented in the U.S., according to the National Registry of Exonerations. The now 62-year-old spends 15,487 days behind bars.
Guards at the Marine Corps' recruit depot in San Diego shot and killed a person who aimed to forcibly enter. The individual threatened personnel with a knife. According to a spokesperson, they approached the checkpoint in a vehicle and exited with the weapon. Guards ordered them to stop, and after several warnings, they shot at the individual. The driver was pronounced dead at the scene.
More to come on Valley View News. The University of California stops using some traditional college entry exams, and an 800-year-old mummy is unearthed in Peru. We'll be right back.
Hello and welcome to On Point. I'm Mohammed Asad. What will a larger conservative majority on the U.S. Supreme Court mean for the nation's politics? This year, presidential campaign between Joe Biden and Donald Trump for elections was intensified by the death of the Supreme Court Judge Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Ginsburg was a liberal judge. Last month, the U.S. Senate confirmed her replacement with the new Justice Amy Coney Barrett, meaning 6 of the court's 9 justices were appointed by Republican President. Barrett is a Catholic and a strongly pro-life.
It's going to definitely mean the court's going to shift to the more conservative basis. I would expect that the decisions that come out of the court on anything like abortion, immigration, crime control, a lot of these are going to have a much more conservative perspective. But the one thing that you have to always keep in mind, and I always come back to it when I teach courses and I talk about this, is that the justices are there for life. And just like you and I and our political philosophies may change over time, so do justices.
Democrats fear the justice's religious views may interfere with her decisions. They're most concerned about how she'd rule on a challenge to the famous Roe v. Wade decision, which effectively legalizes abortion in America. On Point's Alexia Mersola has more on the story.
Thank you, Mohammed. Today I am speaking with Professor Bruce Zucker, an Associate Chair of CSUN's Criminology and Justice Studies Department, Kimberly West Falcon, a Professor of Law at Loyola Marymount University, and Betrol Ross, the Chancellor's Professor of Law at UC Berkeley. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us. So when asked by Lindsey Graham during her hearing if she would be able, so this is Amy Barrett's hearing, if she would be able to put her Catholic beliefs aside on any issue before her, Barrett said she had before and would continue to do so. So my question for you all is, do you all believe she will be impartial in any area she will come across as a Supreme Court justice? Let's start with Professor Ross.
Yes, thank you. I think that one thing to understand is the difference between impartiality and neutrality. I think that she will be impartial in the sense that she will not be favorable to one party over the other in a particular case or in a particular matter. I don't think that, I trust that she has the ethical motivation that would lead her to be impartial. Mm-hmm. But neutrality is a different thing, right? Neutrality on the issues that will confront her, I think it's unlikely. And I think it's unlikely for any judge or justice, because when your main responsibility, as it is for justices on the Supreme Court, is to interpret the Constitution, and the Constitution is quite ambiguous and vague, and values will inevitably influence how these particular individuals will decide cases.
What about Professor West Falcon?
I certainly agree with Professor Ross, and I would add that I try to encourage my students and folks when I'm trying to talk about how we would like to distinguish between public policy questions, what you believe the world should be, what your opinions are about matters of faith. Those are issues that are distinct from questions of law and legal doctrine, the rules of law, and they're also distinct from questions of legal theory. Your theory as to how you should decide the meaning of a particular provision of the Constitution.
Professor Zucker, would you like to add to that?
What tells me a lot, and what I'm hoping, I guess, about her, she's a disciple of the late Justice Antonin Scalia. And Scalia, although by no means is considered a liberal, he was to the right. He wasn't as far to the right as people like Clarence Thomas, who's proven to be, I think just somebody who, his whatever the most right-leaning way to decide something, he will go that direction almost always.
That's very interesting, actually. Because I think playing off of my question, Scalia was a Constitution originalist. Will that affect her decisions?
I would say that it is unquestionably significant that she's a particular kind of originalist. Originalism comes in many flavors, maybe so many that it doesn't even warrant being deemed a coherent or consistent theory. But Scalia's form of originalism is Amy Coney Barrett's form of originalism, and it's called original public meaning originalism. And it is striking because of how non-constraining it is. It sounds great to the lay person, but it operates in such a way that the judges who are implementing it have an immense amount of power.
I know that was a lot of stuff to cover in a small amount of time. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. This will be very helpful for our viewers.